Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chapter 5, verses 21 till the end. Bahyasparsheshvasaktatma vindatyatmani yat sukham sabhrahma yoga yuktatma sukhamakshayamashnute yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukhayonaya evate आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुम् प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामः तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः कामक्रोधवियुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम् स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्यान् चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवोः प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यतेन्द्रियमनोबुद्धिः मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छाभयक्रोधः यः सदा मुक्त एव सः भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति. Hari Om, Namaskaram to everyone. There was a question that was given. The question reads, how does one get rid of one's desires? Isn't it? And I noticed that in the short span, how the wisdom flew like the mighty Ganges, almost I was swept away with the wisdom. So I'm indeed humbled to be in the presence of such wisdom. Now, very, very pertinent points by everyone. Now, how does one get rid of desires? In fact, somebody, an outsider who rides on the desires, who lives by desires, who believes that life is just to run behind desires, can ask this fundamental question: why should I think of even getting rid of my desires when I think life is and its purpose is just to go and satisfy whatever your desires are? You and I may be convinced with the question, but an outsider would question the very question itself and says, on what basis would you recommend me? I don't think it is acceptable or it is plausible for me to even consider the idea of wanting to get rid of my desires. Now, a word on or two on that, because even though we are very clear, but we must understand primarily that acting on any desire by itself is sinful. To be driven on desires is to lead a life of sin. And how is it sinful? Because any desire, as we've often said, is a selfish connotation, has a selfish attitude. It is a selfish relationship with the world. It develops a selfish attachment. It causes extreme pain and sorrow and suffering. Now, how does it cause sorrow and suffering? The desires and the emotions that arise from the desire cause considerable mental imbalance. And not only does it cause mental imbalance, it causes insecurity. It also clouds the Atman. It clouds the real self within. It's like a thick haze or like a storm. It blindfolds you completely. You don't see anything other than it. So the desires completely cloud the self and you don't see the reality. All right. Now, we ask this question in the context of abstinence and indulgence, isn't it? Which was the verse we were doing? I think it was verse 23, isn't it? 23, all right. So, in the 23rd verse, as we learned, he said he was able to withstand the force arising from the desire, the force arising from desire and anger. Sasukhi naraha, he's a happy man. Sayuktaha, he's a yogi. So in that context, we ask this question. Now, indulgence, what a very superficial or very initial understanding of indulgence is, indulgence only feeds into the desires. It's like adding fuel to fire. So through indulgence, by running behind the desires, whether be it physical or mental, you cannot get rid of the desires. Secondly, if you lead a life of abstinence, it only causes enormous agony and frustration and disappointment because you're not giving into what your mind craves or wants. So these two extremities don't help you to handle the desires. Now, the first step, if you want to get rid of the desires, the first step you must do is to envision a goal or an ideal or a purpose in life. And it is very important to have a goal, because a life without a goal or a purpose in life is to run behind the mind's unending demands and desires and wants. Either you are running behind what your mind demands, what your mind is fascinated with, and you lead a life of fulfilling your mind's cravings, which is an unending pursuit all through your life. You can keep satisfying all what your mind craves. You may want a better job, you may want a better company, you may want to uh, have more children, you may want to expand your business, you want to travel the world, you want to buy a better car, you want to get a better degree, you may want many things, and yet you may get all what your mind demands and craves, and yet there is no satiation, there is no satisfaction in such pursuit, isn't it? There is no end to that. So all your life you can run behind the physical, mental, intellectual demands, the various desires your mind entertains. You can run behind them and feel exhausted because you have never satisfied it, or you conceive a goal or a purpose in life which is done by your own intellect. So your intellect envisions a goal, an ideal, or a purpose, and we always said a goal or an ideal or a purpose has an unselfish connotation. Now, when we say that envision a goal, attainment of that goal is in the future. But what is it that you have to deal with? What you and I have to deal with is the existing desires. And the desires are a considerable force, as we have learned in the previous classes. It's a considerable force that draws us into the world to contact the world and enjoy the world, isn't it? Now, even though I would wish to reach a state envisioned by my intellect, the goal, but currently I have to deal with the existing desires. You've got to accept that. It's not that you're free from desires, you have desires. Now, how do I deal with them? You just simply can't get rid of them. Have you ever seen a dog, or if you've ever given a dog a bath, and if you have left the dog to itself, what does it do? How does it get rid of the excess or the water on it? How does it? Head to toe, it will just keep shaking it, and then all the water will. That's how it will get rid of it. You and I can't do. We'll take a towel and rub ourselves off. But a dog or a cat, it will just shake itself off, and you can't mentally shake off yourself to get rid of the desires or vasanas within you. You cannot. You're holding on. The desires are holding on to you, clinging on to you. So you got to respect it. You got to understand it. Now, so the Shastras, the scriptures, what they are telling us is your vasanas and desires should be looked at as that which gives you the field of operation. The vasanas in me, the vasanas in you. If you have vasanas for business, the business vasanas in you create the environment, the field of operation where you can go and operate, isn't it? How can I get rid of my vasanas with which I'm born with? I can't. Because the question is, how does one get rid of the desires? So the vasanas and desires primarily must be understood as that which takes me into a particular field of activity. If I've got vasanas for business, I'm a businessman. If I've got a vasanas for sports, I'm a sportsman. If I've got vasanas for music, I'm a musician. I've got vasanas for philosophy, I'm a philosopher. Now, I ask you, what is wrong with having a vasana or a desire? The Shastras say there's nothing wrong with having a vasana or a desire. What is wrong is falling a prey to it. You should not fall a prey to your own mental desires and vasanas. So you use your vasanas, you use your desires to operate in them and then get rid of them. Now, what I'm trying to say is you can't checkmate your desires. I can't sit and say, I don't like to have desires. The Shastras say, man minus desires equals Godhood. Therefore, I want to get rid of them. You and I cannot get rid of our desires. So what do we need to do? We need to use our desires as a field of operation and function in them. That becomes your swadharma. Whatever vasanas, desires you have, that is what your personality is. You got to use it. You got to respect what your personality is. Use it to operate in that field first. Now, so what I'm trying to carefully build a thought. So if you are following me, you'll be able to get that picture what I'm trying to convey. Now, as I said earlier, indulgence. And one who leads a life of indulgence and abstinence is a path of materiality. A person who is leading an indulgent life, he is indulging physically and mentally, isn't it? Now, please take a note of this. A person who is indulging at the physical level and at the mental level, isn't it? At the physical level, there is no taboo to his contact. Mentally, you're indulging in the sense of you are lingering, you are craving. So there's a lot of craving. There's an anxiety before you get the object of desire, and after the experience you linger. You've already gone through that. So the indulgence, physically and mentally, you are participating. Now in abstinence, what is it that's participating? Now, what is it that's not participating? When you're abstaining, what is it that's not participating? Pariji? Mr. Harish Kumar. Oh, we need to address him differently from now on.
Hariom Guruji.
Where are you, sir?
Right here, sir.
Amma, sir. We know, sir. You're sitting right there, but physically you are there, mentally you're somewhere else, sir. This is exactly what's happening with the person who's abstaining, sir. So in abstinence, what's happening? Physically, he is
enjoying.
Sir.
Physically, he is participating.
No, you're confirmed you're not here. Confirmed you're not here. I just caught you off guard and you're proving it. Okay. When a man is indulging, what is his status of the physical body and the mind, Harishji?
Oh, okay, his involvement is only at the mental level.
Indulgence.
Sorry.
When a person is indulging, what is his status of the physical and mental?
Physically, he is participating. Mentally, he is either lingering or craving.
Correct. Now, when you're abstinence, what is the physical and mental status?
Physically, he is not concerned with what is happening. He is away from it. And mentally, there is no craving, there is no lingering, but I suppose it's only purely driven by the intellect.
No. See, we said that indulgence and abstinence do not help you to get rid of the desires, because these are the two extremities. Mere abstinence by itself will not help you. So when a person is merely abstaining, they are physically abstaining, but they have given a license to the mind to still wander with the sense objects, isn't it? Where is the mind? The mind is very much there, reveling in the senses, but physically they are away. And such people are known as hypocrites. Mithyachara sauchate. In the third chapter, he calls them as mithyachara. So if you are physically indulging and mentally abstaining in the name of spirituality, it's a no-no, because the desires will still be there. And we took the example of Osho, who said, live a life of go all out, burn out the desires and get rid of them through experience. So you cannot exhaust your desire through mere experience. Nor can you exhaust your desire by physically abstaining and mentally participating. These two standpoints, is it clear? Now, the third, so the first two parts are literally you're leading a life of materiality and sensuality. You know, can you take examples of people who are not really a hypocrite, but those who practice abstinence? Who are the people who practice abstinence? Oh, Navaratri time, I don't eat. Or Amavasya, I don't eat this. Or these are the times I don't eat onion. Or these are the times I don't do this. Abstinence. They think they're doing a great thing by sacrificing something. Abstinence. Physically, they're abstaining. Is that spiritual? Is that an act of spirituality? Somebody is nodding head, yes. No, there's silent understanding between them and me. Merely physically abstaining and mentally allowing your mind is no good, is no use. They do so many vratas and pujas and whatnot with the hope of dropping something. By physically dropping and not dropping it at the mental level is of no use. You're going to drop mentally, not physically. Now, so these two will not help to fulfill the objective. Now, what really is the path the Shastras are recommending is the middle path. Now, if you heard what I said initially, that your vasanas and desires are the field of your operation. You can't run away from the very vasanas or desires you're born with. I am born with it. I can't run away from them. I got to respect the vasanas or desires I have, because that is the swadharma. That is my nature. It is the field of my operation. So, ideally speaking, how does one get rid of desire is through the intellect. If you can deal it with knowledge, get it done with it, deal with it, uproot it and get rid of it. You understand the futility of something and you drop it, you're done with it. But how many of us can get rid of desires through knowledge? Show of hands of all those who are put on the camera. How many of you can say, sir, yes, I have enough knowledge and I can get rid of my desires with knowledge? All the wisdom that flew for the question. Where are the show of hands here? Huh? No show of hands. What's going on? Vasantama?
It's quite difficult. Maybe by step we can do a little bit at a time.
Certainly step by step, but the step I'm saying is, can one checkmate the mind's desires with the intellect?
Yes, Guruji, if you are with
Yes.
good satsang and good, you have done a lot of manana and shravana and all that, if you have done, little by little, like you say, you cannot reach the absolute level. Might be a...
No, I'm just asking, can you dismiss a desire with knowledge?
Yes, Guruji, we can.
Yes. But many a time we can't achieve that. Why is it?
Because our mind is strong and our intellect is weak.
Correct. We can get desire can be exhausted. Getting to the question, how does one get rid of desires? Two simple ways. You can exhaust it through knowledge, or you can exhaust it through experience. I could have directly come to the statement. I've spent 15 minutes explaining other things to only clarify this. So we cannot exhaust the desire with intellect, because our mind is strong, intellect is weak, it will not work. Now, the only choice most of us are left with, not leading a path of indulgence. I'm sure none of us want to lead a path of indulgence, nor do we want to lead a path of abstinence. Then what is it that is left for us? There is a path in between, that is the middle path, which is the path of spirituality. So spiritual path to adopt how to get rid of desires is the extremities between the two. In between the two extremities, there is a path, which is to exhaust your desires through experience. Are you with me, Ma?
Yes, Guruji.
Are you all with me? You cannot exhaust and desire through indulgence or abstinence. You only exhaust it either through knowledge, but it is limited wisdom. Therefore, what do? We need to exhaust it through experience, which is where I said you have a desire, you have a vasana, you get into the field of vasana, and how do you operate in the field of vasana determines whether you acquire or you get rid of it. Now, the middle part they're talking about is physically you are participating in the world, but mentally you are disassociating your participation with the world. Mentally you are disassociating, physically you are associating. This is the third possibility, which is what we're talking about. The first two are, they're not going to help you. Quickly recap again. Indulgence, you're physically and mentally participating. Abstinence, you're physically not participating, you're mentally participating. And the third is the spiritual path. You're physically participating and mentally not participating. You got to know these three, clearly write down. Harishi, can you capture this for us? Sitaramji, you got that concept? I'll explain it, but I want you to understand what I'm trying to explain. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The spiritual one that you mentioned, I mean, it appears very straightforward that, you're physically in the participating, but mentally dissociating intellectually. But, is it as easy as that?
No,
It's
it's
because
not
when you're,
easy. It's not
when you're
easy.
indulging in it, you get involved in it, you get passionate about it. It's so difficult to keep that Sakshi Bhavana when you are doing all that.
Correct. Now, if you remember, when I first started explaining, one of the first things you do if you want to get rid of desire, what's the first thing you got to do?
You think higher goal you should have.
You must have a clear goal and higher purpose.
Yeah.
So that is your purpose in life, not to merely get run behind your mind's desires and chase and fulfill them for the mere fascination. Your life is not driven to fulfill all the mental fascinations. You resolve within that my life is defined by the purposes I want to envision, which is to serve a larger cause. Now, having set that path clearly, now I have to deal with the desires I'm born with. You see this? So if that resolve is not there, you will just run behind the desires, which is everybody is doing. In some form or the other, they're running behind desires. That's not going to help. But if you want to able to fit into the third category, you must have your goal very clear. What is your goal? What is your purpose? That makes your actions very unselfish. But just because I envision the goal, I already said, that doesn't mean you reach it. Now you have to get there. In order to get there, how do I do? I need to use my vasanas and desires as a field of my operation. You get what I'm saying? I got to use my vasanas as a field of operation. Now, how do I operate? I physically into that. I am, let's say I'm a medical practitioner. I'm a doctor. Does it mean that I can't attain salvation? I can't achieve higher spiritual goals? I can't elevate myself spiritually? Definitely can. So what do? I use medicine as the field of my operation. That is my vasana. That is my desire. Now, how do I operate it? I'm physically going through that experience. But where's my mind? My mind is very much anchored on the goal. So I'm using this action as an offering to the Lord. Just because I'm a sportsman doesn't mean I can't attain the higher self. Yes, very much. But I can use the sport to merely bring glory and name and fame and recognition and wealth to myself. Or I can use the game to bring pride and glory to my nation. It's an unselfish cause. I want to bring India on the global map. I want to see Indian anthem, Indian flag hoisted and flying high, because I want to bring gold medal for the country. And I take great pride in bringing pride to my nation. Not for my self-recognition, but for that. I want to win an Olympic gold for my country. That's a higher goal. Just because I have vasanas for sports doesn't mean I can't be spiritual. Now, for what am I doing? There's an unselfish cause, there's an ideal or a purpose. So when I'm working in the field, where is my mind? My mind is not to merely gratify and aggrandize selfishly, but to fulfill a larger objective. So physically you're active, mentally you are not feeding the desire. So you're going through the experience, but you're not indulging, you're not craving, you're not lingering. You go through the experience, but you're mentally not available for it. You're not going into the experience for the joy of it. You're going into the experience, you're going into the desire, you're going through the desire with the only objective of getting rid of desire. So you're not getting into the desire for the joy of it. You're getting into the desire to get rid of it. So you may be seeing people acting, but they are acting in a field which is their nature, their svabhava, their vasanas, but mentally their thoughts are on the higher. In fact, this in short is known as karma yoga. So you're using karma, you're using action, you're using experience to exhaust your vasanas or desires. In fact, karma yoga is the path which is used to challenge or deal with the bulk of your vasanas or desires. Your desires, the lower desires drop and you pick up a higher desire. And the only way you'll do is by operating in the lower, but thinking of the higher. Isn't there a simple old saying, simple living, high thinking? What does it mean? I am very much down to earth, but my thoughts are very lofty. Where are my thoughts? My thoughts are pegged onto something grand, something noble, something beyond my own little self. So you're physically here, but you're mentally anchored onto something higher. So you go through the experience, you can, in fact, Swami Ramatirtha says, this knowledge is more designed for grihasthas than sannyasis. Gayatri Ma, slightly disqualified. It is more designed for grihasthas. Than someone who has renounced the world and living in isolation in an ashram or a kutia or cut off from the world. It's more for people here than there. He spells it in a certain context. Don't take it literally. So you have no choice but to go through the experience. Why have you no choice? Because I'm not able to handle it with with knowledge and wisdom. So what am I left with? I have left with no choice but to go through experience. But why am I going through experience? Not for the joy of it, because I understand the desire is between me and my development. So I'll go through it, but go through it with an objective of getting rid of it. A simple example I'll take. Let's say we all are sitting in this classroom as we are engrossed and occupied. Suddenly you feel an uneasy bowel movement. You feel a certain uneasiness within. You say, hey, class has just started. I can't excuse myself and leave. I don't want to miss the answer. So you just say, let me sit for another few minutes. Let me manage. You try to control. A few minutes pass by, but the pressure within is greater. You have no choice but to visit the washroom. So what you do, you just switch off the camera, as some of them have done. So I don't know whether they're or where they are. I do not know. So they switch off the camera and they excuse themselves from the screen. And they quickly rush to the washroom and do whatever business they have to do there, and do that and quickly come back to the classroom. All right. Now this example, when you are in the classroom, Anaburnama, when you were in the classroom, let's say you have to excuse yourself. When you are in the washroom, in the classroom, now washroom, when you're in the classroom, where's your mind? I don't have to visit the washroom. I'm very much in the classroom.
Hari Om Guruji. When I am in the classroom and if I have some discomfort, my mind will be dwelling in the discomfort only.
No, you mean to say you don't want to attend the
Even
class?
though physically I am in the...
you don't want to attend the
physically
class. No, obviously physical discomfort
no,
is there.
Guruji.
Do you mean to say you will want to go in the washroom and spend the rest of the hour in the washroom? No, Ilya.
No, at least no.
It is a
But
physical
it'll be
discomfort.
in my mind.
A physical
Yes.
discomfort. Your mind is very much in the classroom. No doubt the physical discomfort is felt. You're trying to contain it. You're trying to postpone it so that you don't miss it. So your mind is very much in the classroom. Now, when you've decided that you want to take a short break from the classroom, you're physically away from the classroom. Where is your mind?
In the classroom.
I am very much in the classroom. When you finish what you have to do and you come back to the classroom, where is your mind?
It'll be with the class.
In the classroom. So what that simple example conveys is, before you took the break where the discomfort was felt, your mind was very much in the classroom. When you went away from the class, your mind was in the classroom. When you come back into the class, your mind is again in the classroom. So where is your mind? Your mind is very much pegged on to the higher, even though physically you had to be excused.
Briefly.
Where's your mind? Very much mind is on the higher. Are you with me? So the action doesn't determine whether you're spiritual or not. What determines you're spiritual or not is the state of your mind. Where is your mind? If somebody has a vasanas to lead a life of a grihastha, does it disqualify him to be a spiritual man? Does that determine that he can't reach the spiritual elevated state? Not at all. He had someone decides to lead a life of a grihastha. Why? Because he's born with the vasanas to be a grihastha. Can he be complained for that? Does that make him less spiritual or more spiritual? No. It's how does he treat that institution of marriage. He can use that institution of marriage and develop an attachment for my child, my grandchild, my home, my family, my country. This is me. I'm here. I'm stuck with it. You can't think anything beyond that. You made another country your home. You got stuck to that country. You got attached to something that you think is everything in life. Now you can use family and get attached to it, or you can use that family and evolve with the family. Is it not? So you use the family for what purpose? Not to merely indulge and gratify your own personal desire to have a family, but you are going through the family with the objective of getting rid of the desire. I want to get that bug out of me so that this thought doesn't become an impediment for my higher goal. Because whenever you have a desire, the desire becomes an impediment until you gratify it and fulfill it. Remember that. But here you are trying to see whether you can handle the desire with knowledge. When you can't deal with knowledge, what do? Okay, chalo yaar, let me experience it. But I'm not experiencing it for the sake of maja. I'm experiencing it with the only objective of getting rid of it. So this is the path of karma yoga, and it all starts with a clear goal or a purpose. So you go through the experience, you everything is normal, but inwardly there is a resignation. Inwardly you have switched off. You're not available for the world. As a result of which, you get the satisfaction of doing what you have to do here. At the same time, you reach the higher state. You are truly a man of liberation. And end of it, the lower desires are dropped off. There's no more the lower desires. You are well established in the higher, because desires are created with mental participation. So when your mind is not participating, the desire dries away. It's not fed. There's no more desire. There's no more consequences of riding on desires. Are you all able to conceive? It's a very subtle idea. If you're able to understand how it fits in, you'll be able to live a life exactly what you're living. You don't have to do anything to your life. Just shift your mind to something higher. And for that, you need this knowledge. You need this knowledge so that you're able to catapult the mind to something else. Just help you conceive that life is just not mere acquisition and enjoyment. That's not all the purpose of life. It's something else. So you stop feeding the desires. In effect, what you would be doing is you don't feed it. So the desire naturally sublimates and gets dismissed. It disappears. Automatically it drops away. You can't forcefully pull a desire out. Let it drop away. It drops away. Siddharamji, you wanted to say something?
What I want, the example that you just gave about, having to go to the washroom, in the biography of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he says something very similar. So in his ashram comes a so-called yogi who says that, he has conquered his senses fully and he's able to meditate and go into samadhi without any difficulty, and nothing will upset him when he's in samadhi. So Ramakrishna looks at him and says, okay, that's extremely good. And I'm glad to meet a person of your caliber and stature. Next day, as this guy sits down to do his meditation or samadhi, he starts getting loose motions. And he runs and runs and runs. So next day, after that, Ramakrishna asked him that, how was your day today? Was it, you could control your senses? And this guy's crestfallen. He says, look, I was completely engrossed, but the moment something physical happened, I had just no way of controlling it. So one may say that one can control one's physical desires and needs, but it's impossible to do that through intellect. All you got to do is, like you mentioned, that one has to indulge in those things, but sublimate those things, or in this particular case, come back to what your intellect is wanting to do. That's what I wanted to share with you.
So what's the conclusion to that?
No, the conclusion was that you cannot say that you are able with your intellect conquer your physical desires. Very difficult to do that. You can, they will be there. You have to go through it and sublimate it in a different fashion. But to say that I can control my physical desires and sensory objects through my mind is extremely difficult to do. That was the conclusion that he was drawing.
I don't know whether it's the right thought, or it doesn't resonate rightly with me. I would rather say that way, you know, because the entire objective is not to frustrate yourself. You know, you don't have to deny yourself of anything in life. Go ahead and experience, as long as it's legitimate. As long as you feel it doesn't interfere with my goal, you know, I will. But you know, so tomorrow my mind entertains a funny desire, a funny thought. You got to just sometimes just say to the mind, just shut up, man. You know, you can't play tricks with me. You must have the strength and the guts to challenge the mind and say, nothing doing. Be here. I will not fall a prey to it. That kind of conviction must be there.
Yeah, no, the limited point which Ramakrishna was trying to make in that particular anecdote which he relates is to say that, look, your mind cannot overcome your sensory perceptions. It's impossible to do that. That was a limited point. Not about sublimating that, which is true, but that physically what is there, you can't say that, okay, I control my body fully with my mind. That was the point he was making.
No, see,
the physical needs are there which cannot be overridden by what your mind wants to say. That, look, sorry, I'm in a samadhi, so none of these things will come to me. If it has to happen, like it said in slightly colloquial terms, is when you got to go, you got to go. You can't help it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Ushama, you was trying to say something? Did you say something about escapism? Did you?
Can I answer?
Hariji, yes.
Yeah, this example had some limitation. That is why. But if you take another example, I feel like eating sugar, refined sugar or some sweet. I can sublimate that feeling by converting that by eating a fruit. This particular example it was a limited connotation.
Yeah, it has a very limited connotation. Yes, you're right. Agree. Yes, you're right, Ji. Okay. Yes, Ramji, you want to say something, please?
Yeah, Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
I was trying to understand that if you have vasana and desire to be to provide good health to people, and you become a doctor, you become a surgeon for that purpose,
right?
And you become the best surgeon in the world. When you operate, when you do a brain surgery or a heart surgery or spinal surgery, you are God. In fact, surgeons' hands are like gods because they really do such fine surgeries that the hands really become the giver of life. So then you become God. So if you achieve that, as Krishna says somewhere else in the Gita, I don't remember which one, but yoga karmasya kaushalam. That means if you achieve kaushalam, which is the ultimate
dexterity
in your karma, action.
Yes.
That is yoga. That itself is yoga.
Correct.
So if you reach such positions, then I think that is the ultimate thing in life. I mean, so is that a way to fulfill what you are saying here, the spiritual route to getting rid of desires? Is there a connection between these two?
Very much. In fact, rightly said, and I've also quoted earlier and saying the spirit with which you operate in the field of your operation, how you function with your mind lodged onto higher, is nothing but karma yoga. And in fact, this is very much part of karma yoga, where he says yoga karmasu kaushalam. He says that, rightly quoting, where he says dexterity of mind is yoga, dexterity of action. And he says peace of mind also is yoga. where your mind is peace and established in the, and that peace, being established in peace, only comes when your mind is anchored onto the higher. So
Right.
dexterity, which is nothing but efficiency and productivity, you're very smart and skillful. At the same time, it says keeping the mind calm and composed. So these two elements, he calls it as yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate. So I think few verses apart, he says this. On one verse, he says Samatvam yoga uchyate. Another verse, he says yoga karmasu kaushalam. So these are the two essential ingredients of an action. An action should produce you peace. An action should also be dexterous, skillful, and smart. So if these two elements are achieved, then a man is said to be a yogi, a man of perfection, which is what is karma yoga. So at that point, one doesn't fall a prey to the desire or the emotions arising out of desire, which is what was said in the 23rd verse.
Yeah.
All right, Ji?
Okay. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Right, Ji. Okay, so give the concept a thought, what I've clarified, what we discussed, so that you understand the intricacies of difference between indulgence, abstinence, and a man who leads a life of karma yogi. So you are leading a life of action. At the same time, you're burning off your desires of the lower because your mind is pegged onto the higher. Okay. Let's take up the next verse, which is verse 25. 25, please. Yeah. Labhante brahma nirvanam rishaya kshina kalmashaha chinnadvaidhayatatmanaha sarvabhuta hite rataha. Labhante brahma nirvanam rishaya kshina kalmashaha chinnadvaidhayatatmanaha sarvabhuta hite rataha. The sages attain the bliss of Brahman. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam. Labhante, the sages, Rishayaha. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayaha. Sages attain the bliss of Brahman. Kshina Kalmashaha, whose sins have been destroyed, whose dualities are torn asunder, who are self-controlled. So, whose sins have been destroyed is Kshina Kalmashaha, whose dualities are torn asunder is Chinnadvaidha, whose dualities are torn asunder. Yatatmanha, who are self-controlled. Sarva bhuta hite rataha, those who revel in the welfare of others. So those who practice all this attain the bliss of Brahman. Now, I'm getting messages that we have not touched on verse 24. Haven't we? I thought we touched. We haven't, huh? We haven't chanted also? Oh, okay. Did I not quote Umar Khayyam? I did, but I quoted in a different context, I think. I think I quoted in 23rd verse, if I'm not wrong. Okay. 24, please then. Yonta sukhontararamah tathantarjyotirevayah sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutodhigacchati. Yonta sukhontararamah tathantarjyotirevayah sayogi brahma nirvanam Brahma bhutodhigacchati. He who is happy within, who rejoices within, who is illumined within, that yogi alone, becoming Brahman, gains the bliss of Brahman. Yonta sukhonta aramah antaramah, who rejoices within, antah sukha, who is happy within, antar jyotihi, who is illumined within, sa yogi, that yogi, Brahma nirvanam, gains the bliss of Brahman and he becomes Brahman. Aramah, Sukham, Jyoti. Three words which convey the same thing, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of delight or contentment or joy within. Now, all we got to understand, what do we understand when we talk of this? What should you understand? Contentment. So use the word rejoice, happy, illumine. What should you understand from this? Vasanti is saying desirelessness. No. In a way, but what's the message here? Such persons are liberated. Contentment is better than riches. Don't depend on the external stimuli. Depend on one's own internal resources. Everything is within. One who has reached a sense of saturation point, self-realized, to revel in the internal. In fact, it is good to say it is internal. But what is it? What is it that's far more impactful? What would be the opposite of it? Rajima, what would be the opposite of this? Because the whole concept gains a lift when you understand the opposite.
Could it be he becomes a role model?
We are not talking of any models here.
No, he attains that sainthood or completeness, that paripurnam, where he becomes a role model for others.
What are we talking here, Ma?
The one who is happy within, who rejoices within, who is illumined within,
Right.
that yogi alone becomes the Brahman.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are talking about a state of happiness, enlightenment, or contentment. So, and he qualifies it by saying within. So I was trying to ask, what do we gather when the scriptures say this? And I read out all the comments, lovely comments that came by. But I said, then I said, what is the opposite of it? I'm just trying to give you a chain of thought so that I come to the point which I'm asking you.
The opposite of it would be a samsari,
What is
entangled in the worldly attachments.
See, we are not talking of detachment here. What are we talking about? We're talking about a state of happiness, contentment, joy, or rejoicing, isn't it? And where is that? Everybody said happiness is within.
Within.
Now everybody says happiness within. And still, what is everybody doing?
Looking for it outward.
Correct. So, in spite of we all proclaiming that happiness is within, everyone is still running behind the external world, running to, somebody said riches, everybody is running outward with the hope and belief that you will get happiness outside. So the realization of happiness is within is more profound when you understand the opposite of it. And what is the opposite of it?
It cannot be found other than inside.
It is not outside. You're still being indirect. The direct opposite of that is there is no satiation, no contentment, there is no happiness, no joy in the external pursuits of the world. Full stop. The opposite is there is no end to it. There is no happiness there. This is exactly the opposite, which is the real realization of happiness within is measured by the realization of the absence of it outside. Because that is the real test, isn't it? It's not how much you say it is within, but if you still run behind the external world and still enchanted by what the world has to offer, you have not understood that it's within. If you understand it's within, why will you continue to run behind the external Kanchana and Kamini? What is Kanchana, Kamini? Acquisition and enjoyment. You will not run behind the acquisition and enjoyment of the external world if you have truly understood it's not there. But that doesn't mean you should not acquire, not enjoy, please. The Shastras are not against it. The Shastras are against the falling a prey to acquisition and enjoyment. Can you say no to it and seek the self within? And if you can do that, such a person, he says, gains the bliss of Brahman. Even in a layman's perspective, it's very difficult to convince. In fact, it is very easy for me to tell you the happiness within, but it is impossible for me to convince you that there's no happiness outside. I can't convince you. So, on a full moon day, you go out into the open, you see there is enough light. Let's say you go into the fields, into a village, and you find it's pitch dark because there's no power in the village. But a full moon day, there's enough light for you to find your way in the fields. Gayatri, am I following? What did he say so far?
On a full moon day in the village, there is no power and you just go out and there is a light which reflects from the full moon.
No, I didn't say reflex and all. The additional philosophy.
Okay.
Did I say reflex and all? I know you all are Mahagurus, that is the problem. So much wisdom out there. You're not able to contain the wisdom. There's enough light. Perhaps even you may manage, if you get used to that light, if you stay in that light for a while, you can even read a paper or a magazine. There's enough light, you can do that. And to a person who's reading a paper in that moonlight, You go and tell that man, that ignorant man, there is no light in the moon. Would he believe that?
No, he won't believe.
Can you convince him that there is no light in the moon when he's reading the newspaper under that moonlight?
No, not possible.
And yet you and I know that there is no light in the moon, because those who went to the moon carried the torch with them. This is the experience of those who've been there. There is no light there. And yet it sheds the light so that you are able to find your way in pitch darkness. And yet there is no light. It is as challenging as you trying to convey that wisdom or knowledge to an ignorant person that there is no light in the moon, is as challenging for these great men to appeal to us to say that there is no joy and happiness in the external world, man. How can you convince a boy who wants an ice cream? There's no joy in ice cream. How can you convince that child? It's impossible. How can you convince a young entrepreneur who is trying to make the millions in his life that there is no big deal in the next million, man? What are you running behind? It is just another number. He is not going to be convinced with that. You cannot satisfy. You can't convince a man running whatever he's chasing in the world. There is nothing out there. You cannot convince. So it is not in the understanding that it is within. It is in the realization it's not out there. Now, Gayatri Ma, can you please tell us, where is the light coming from?
The light is coming from for the moon, the light is coming from the sun.
I'm asking not for the moon, for you and me, where is it coming from?
It is coming from the Brahman within.
Ayyo, Brahman enga vandadunga. I'm saying you see a light coming from the moon. Where is it coming from? As you use the word, it's a reflection.
It is from the reflection.
The sun's
Reflects.
rays falling on the moon, it's a reflection that we see and we are enamored by, isn't it? Now, can you draw a parallel of that to the analogy of what we are falling for?
Whatever we see also is a reflection which is coming from the, like the other things, whatever we are seeing in the world is a reflection of the Brahman, but we are fascinated by the world.
So the joy you are running behind in the worldly objects or beings is nothing but the
reflection
bliss,
of the
bliss which is emanating from the Brahman, reflecting on these objects. And you're collecting these pebbles and collectibles, thinking there's joy in these, and you're hoarding and hoarding and hoarding, acquiring and hoarding, thinking that's all life is. And that's not going to give you any contentment, satisfaction, because there is no joy in it. It's like a mirage in a desert. It is an illusion. You all are falling a prey to an illusion. There is no joy in it. That is what this Shastra is saying. So one who realizes that and finds that happiness, rejoicing and contentment within, such a person alone gains the bliss of Brahman. So this verse have been understood on the contrary, the opposite, the flip side of it, if you understand, will make a sense. Will make greater sense to us. Rather than saying, oh, happiness within, everybody will say, even the most illiterate fellow, spiritual illiterate would say happiness within. That's no big deal. The real deal is you don't fall for the external temptations. And how else we say that the happiness outside is not true happiness? Anybody? How else do we say that there is no happiness in the outside world? How do we say that? And these are all intellectual arguments. Ultimately, you must experience it. Yes, Hariji?
The world is continuously changing, and anything that is changing can never give a permanent happiness. So whatever little bit of happiness you are getting from the changing world, the product of that changing world itself will be a changing one. So what is happiness today will be unhappiness tomorrow.
Correct. That happiness you derive is changing, is changeable, is variable, it's not permanent, it's temporal. Ushama also says it's fleeting. Jayama says it is limited. Yes. Venkateshwar Garu, correct. The other point which I was looking at is it has any pleasure derived from the external world has a joyful beginning but has a sorrowful end. So the reality is there is no happiness in it. If it has happiness in it, it will continue to give happiness. There is no happiness. So in fact, what are you chasing? What are you seeking? You're only trying to chase and seek and fulfill your mental imaginary happiness. It's all your imagination of what happiness is. What your mind believes happiness is what you're chasing. It's not what real happiness is. And it's interesting, if interesting to read the minds of people, what is your concept of happiness? Because that's what you're chasing. And the Padminima, what is your concept of happiness? Don't philosophize, huh? Seeking Brahman, she'll say.
No, there was some noise around, so I just wanted to telling them to
No problem.
lower the volume. My happiness is small happiness, which I derive. It happens inside me only, but the source of happiness comes outside object,
From?
from outside.
So it could be experienced within, but it comes from outside factors. It could be small factors outside. But the verse is saying, he who is happy within, who rejoices within. Experiencing. Yes, ma, experience happiness within, correct. But it is triggered and responsible by external factor, external objects, isn't it? So the stimulus or the stimulating factor is still external. It is still dependent on external factors. That is the challenge. So that capacity to be able to find the happiness devoid of the external world. You got to conceive that state. It is not triggered by external factors. Somewhere, we are somewhere, this is somewhere. North Pole and South Pole.
I think most of the human beings experience happiness like that. If an ordinary person like.
Yes, that's what it is, no? So all the happiness people experience is from the external world. It's a subject-object relationship. It is because of the external factors you experience that sense of.
And what makes another person happy may not make me happy. So it is not the object. It is something which is happening inside the.
It's all your imagination. You may find happiness in music. Another person may detest the same music. You may like Carnatic music. Another person what is that? Yesterday I was listening. Vijay, what is that? That some music show we were watching. What was that? That fellow came and he was singing, no? You said rap music. Rap, huh? I think we were watching the program called Indian Idol. Some good songs were being sung, contestants. And one judge fellow was there, and he is a rapper, he said. I said, what rapper? Which newspaper rapper? I was asking. So rapper, then they said, who is that?
That's fast music.
Huh?
It is fast music.
Fast music.
I mean, yeah, rhythm. It is rhythm based.
Okay.
So there is nothing wrong in it.
I'm not saying anything wrong with it. I'm saying
Okay.
somebody may like a rap
Somebody may
music, you may like classic. If I tell you to please give a concert on rap music, you will say, sir, I will play
Yeah, I'm
with
not
Veena.
competent.
No, no, you may be competent, but you will say, sir, I'm a different make.
I
I
can-
prefer this, not that. Yeah.
There are people who enjoy non-vegetarian food, but
Mm.
some people don't like it. So it's like that. It's what appeals to you or your senses.
No, it's all what we are trying to say is, it's all a play of your own mind. If you realize that it's your mind that is playing a trick with you, and then you fall for an imaginary pleasure, because in reality there is no joy or happiness in the external world. It's the mind that's playing a trick. So the moment you realize that it's not there, and then you turn inward, because of all the objects and beings, the happiness, the nature of happiness belongs to the self. The world has no happiness in it. Whether the objects or beings has no happiness in it. The only happiness is from the self. It emanates from the self. The source is there. So the more you go and seek inward, you will experience it. But since we are so engrossed with the external happening, we are not able to go inward. What's the point we are trying to make here? Isn't it? Chinkima rightly says it's not inherent in the object of the person. It is purely a subjective experience. It's something internal. And our experience has taught us, isn't it? What has Harishji, what has our experience taught us? Mr. Harish Kumar. Harish Jina is not reacting. I don't know. Today he is very angry with me.
I'm sorry, Guruji. You're asking what have we learned?
Now, what has experience taught us?
Experience has taught us that anything outside is changing, anything, therefore it has a beginning, it has an end, it is not constant, and therefore it cannot be the true happiness. And also, when you say changing, what it is today may not be what it is tomorrow, and therefore it could have a bitter end beginning and a lovely ending, or other way around.
So you're doing the usual, which is summarizing takeaways. See, has not experience teaches us every time when what is the state of mind of an object before you get it until you get it. What is the state of mind of an object before you get it and upon you get it? What's the state of mind?
Longing or craving?
No. Before you get the object, what is the state of your mind? There is a
Desire.
desire very much. There is a belief that happiness is in that object. When your mind craves something, wants something, it believes happiness is in it. And what is the state of mind when you get to it?
It is not there.
It is not there. And there's enough experience in your life to teach you this. And yet you continue to play the folly, the game of your life. You fall a prey and repeat the same mistake to every next desire, which mind makes you believe it is in something else. And you chase and chase and chase and chase. You get there, you realize it's not there. Again, start another rat race towards something else, another direction. You believe it's there, you get there, you realize it's not there. It's all in the vicious play of your mind that makes you believe, and you consume your entire life with it. That is what the Shastra is saying. But one who realizes that and turns within is a true Rishi, Rishayaha. He's a sage. Isn't it? Ji? And you don't need a sannyasi or a swami or a yogi to come and tell you this. There's enough experience in us to tell us this, to teach us this. The only thing is we don't seem to realize it. We continue to repeat the same mistake in some form or the other. Alas, alas, the says Shastras. The Shastras are saying, wake up. Isn't it? So therefore, I still maintain it is impossible for me to convince you that the happiness is not an external world. It is very easy for me to explain that happiness within. Very easy. But it's very difficult for me to convince you it's not out there. The moment you get convinced, that day you will realize that the true happiness within. So it's the best way of trying to approach this idea is to understand the opposite. I'm glad you brought me back to this verse. Otherwise, we would have missed a very beautiful concept. I thought we covered it. Okay, we'll come back again. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.